Hi everyone, I'm back to Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with the Aftermath. This is the show we do once the dust has settled on the post-match analysis of Newcastle United's latest game, which happened to be a 2-1 defeat at home in the Champions League to Barcelona, the mighty Barcelona. And I'm quite glad I've done this Aftermath now, really, because very often I go on post-match and what I say in the aftermath, what I say in the post-match, I agree with on the aftermath as well. And this is very, very much the same. But I was very grumpy last night in the post-match analysis, and it kind of crept up on me a little bit. I was more frustrated with that game than I actually thought that I was. And just as I kind of come onto the camera and me and Mark were talking, I got more and more annoyed as I started talking more about the game. And the reason I got frustrated and annoyed is still the same reason I feel today. Now I've slept on it and thought about it. I kind of understand the logic of Eddie Howe's decision, but I still think it was a bad decision and the wrong decision to not start Nick Voltemade against Barcelona last night. Anthony Gordon is not a centre-forward. This ruse, this kind of, hope that he will be able to play there is just not going to work. I would say 90% of the time he's played there, he's not been effective enough. He's not done the job. He runs around a lot. He's very quick. He makes dynamic runs and he frightens the life out of defenders, but he's just got no clinical edge when the chances come. And if Nick Voltemade is on that pitch in 4 minutes when Alanga squares that ball across the box, it's maybe 1-0 at Newcastle. It's a different game altogether. So that was a big gamble by Eddie Howe that just quite frankly didn't pay off. People are talking about the Wissa injury and all of that. I get that, but that matters nothing in this game at all because we knew Wissa was injured. We knew he wasn't in the squad. We know Willis Sula's not good enough. So the big decision there for Eddie Howe was, do I start with Nick Voltemade or try and get in front and then change the game and adapt and try and sit in and dig in and get a result? Or do I gamble and I play Gordon through the middle, Barnes on the left, who has been poor all season, ineffective. He was slightly better last night, but he gets chances that he really should do better with, a player of his quality and his finishing ability. Alanga was good for the first 45 minutes. Exon probably very unlucky to be hooked, to be honest with you. But, he puts Gordon in really from the cold. And people are kind of saying about Anthony Gordon, I think I've seen in one of our comments was, he's something about he hasn't been able to play since the red card. The red card was his fault. He got overexcited. He made a stupid tackle that he didn't need to make, and he got a red card. And same thing he did against Brighton when he shoved, was a Van Heck on the floor for no reason either off the ball and got a red card. So Anthony Gordon, excuse me, I've got an itchy ear. Ooh, balancing the old camera there. Anthony Gordon makes these silly decisions and gets red cards. These are Anthony Gordon's fault. It's his fault. He comes out and apologises and he's very eloquent about it, but the reason he hasn't been able to play for the last 3 games is his fault, so let's not make excuses for the player. Let's get it right. But he's not a centre-forward, and we need to stop persevering with that. So if Voltemade can't play, and you need a centre-forward, put Asula in the middle. He's not good enough, but at least he can play as a centre-forward. He's more effective probably as a centre-forward than Gordon is, because at least he gives you a focal figure. But that was the big takeaway from me, was Eddie Howe got this wrong. He gambled, and the gamble didn't pay off. And it was a big game to gamble on. Bournemouth are a good side in the Premier League, and that's going to be a tough game on Sunday. But could you have started Voltemade last night against Barcelona to try and get a unbelievable result in your first Champions League game to put you in a good position to qualify, and then rest him on Sunday and play Gordon through the middle? That's probably the decision. Well, sorry, Gordon can't play Sunday, because he got a red card. Could you play Alanga through the middle on Sunday and then Barnes on the left and Murphy on the right? You probably could, and that's probably in hindsight a better decision to make, Eddie Howe, than the Barcelona one. But he's made it. It backfired. It didn't work. But you can't fault the lads' effort. They put loads of graft in, and I'm not going to come on this video and say that the lads were shite and they played rubbish and all that. They put loads of effort in, but when you're at this level, when you're at the Champions League level, it's effort versus execution. You can put all this effort in and huff and puff as much as you want, but if you don't blow the house down, you don't win the game and you're out of the competition. And Newcastle last night was a real reality check. It's taken me nearly 4 minutes to get the title. A real reality check for me last night. We talked about it on this channel. I was on Sky the other day talking about it, where I felt we had a really good chance to impose our physicality on the Barcelona players. We couldn't get near them. They are levels above any of our players. Ironically enough, outside of Sandro Tonali and Alexander Isak, when he was a Newcastle player, I hate to drop the A-bomb, they're the only 2 players that could probably get into that Barcelona team. Nobody else on our side gets into that Barcelona team. Doesn't even get close. And that was a real reality check for me last night. they're even missing their best player, Lamine Yamal, and I felt they beat us in second gear. We rattled them in the first half. The intensity was there, the press was there. We unsettled them. But when you're going to play like that, you have to be clinical and take your chances. You can't lose the ball when you have the ball, because we let Barca get back into the game. Pedri was magnificent. De Jong was magnificent. There was guys flagging in a Newcastle shirt. The changes should have come sooner for me. That's where Eddie Howe lets himself down. His over loyalty to certain players. I'll get into that in a second. But his lack of, what you want to call it, bravery, smelling danger, innovations. I felt at the end of that first half, it was clear we were lacking a focal point up front. The change I would have made at half-time is I would have had Voltemade on for the start of the second half. And I think if he does that, maybe we don't go 1-0 down. Maybe we'll go 1-0 up and it's a different game altogether. And then you get to the Fabian Schar situation. Now, the doctors and the physios maybe have to take responsibility for this as well. But Fabian Schar gets clattered. And listen, he's done well in the game. He's done really well against Lewandowski. He's fouled him a lot. He's got away with a lot from the referee. The referee's been quite lenient, I think, to Fabian Schar. But this was getting on to the hour mark. And there's players on the bench in the shape of Sven Botman and Malik Chow, who come on and did brilliantly, by the way, that you could have made the change for. When Schar goes down and he's clattered and he grabs his head, right, take the decision out of Shar's hand, make the change. Just say, right, Fabi, you give us an hour, you're probably going to play on Sunday, off you come, we'll bring on Botman or Chow. And if we bring on Botman or Chow, maybe Rashford doesn't get away from Schar with that header, because Schar falls asleep, or whether he's concussed still or whatever. But that was a failure of the whole team, in terms of the back of house team, the physios and the doctors not being strong enough to make that decision for Fabian Schar, and how not overruling them and saying, right, off you get. There's players that can come on who are sharper and quicker and more fresher than you are, Fabi. That's a big mistake from Howe as well. And that's something I think he needs to work upon. He's been an excellent manager for Newcastle, there's no doubt about it. We're in the Champions League because of Eddie Howe. We won the Carabao Cup because of Eddie Howe. I'm not going to sit here and say he's a bad manager, but he does have faults and flaws, and I will never shy away from saying that. And one of them is his ability to change things quickly, and he didn't do that. And he makes a raft of substitutions, and Nick Voltemade was going to come on anyway on the hour mark, but we're already, I think 1-0 down at this particular point. Brings on Nick Voltemade, brings on Joe Willock. I've no idea why. I really don't. The Lewis Miley mystery for me is something I'm going to get my teeth right into after Sunday. If Lewis Miley doesn't play on Sunday, which he probably won't, the way Eddie Howe's going, I'm going to have a video about what's going on with Lewis Miley, because I'm very concerned about the development, or the lack of development, of this player, and how we are handling this as a club. The noises about Lewis Miley want to leave in the summer, I didn't want to believe them, but I'm starting to think they were absolutely bang on the money. So I'll get into that after Sunday if he doesn't play. If he does play and plays well, I'll get into it even more, because this is the bit I don't understand. Joe Linton, great battering ram, energy and all that stuff, was poor against Barca. Lost the ball way too many times, turned into danger, as did Bruno. We weren't retaining the ball well enough. Sandro was trying to play about 2 or 3 different roles, trying to track back and win the ball defensively, trying to start attacks offensively, trying to switch to play. We could have done with another really good ball playing midfielder who looks after the ball. Nice and simple passes, like Pedri did that all night long. Simple little passes, little 5-yard passes here and there, then opened up the game when he wanted to. Lewis Miley could have brought us that. Joe Willock does not bring you that. Joe Willock runs around like a headless chicken into dead ends. I don't even know why the lad's still here. I really don't. He hasn't impacted the game really for 3 years. Injuries have taken a toll on him. Was a great player when he came to us. Eddie Howe coached him into being a better all-around player, but he doesn't offer anything coming off the bench anymore. And if I'm Lewis Miley, I'm pissed off that I'm not getting a chance in that Barcelona game when it was crying out for somebody to look after the ball in midfield, and he'd have done that. So that's something I'd like the journalists to put to Eddie Howe as a question. I think they're a little bit too softly, nicey with Eddie Howe. Certain journalists ask hard-hitting questions and they get criticised for it, but there's not enough questions being asked around those midfield selections for me. And Jacob Ramsey was signed as well, so I mean Lewis Miley could even be 5th or 6th choice midfielder now. But I'll get into this more in the Lewis Miley video. But it's frustration for me, it really is. But we make those substitutions. Gordon stays on the pitch. Alanga's unlucky to come off, and nothing really changes. Gordon goes out left, he wins a couple of free kicks, and him and Tino are kind of getting each other's way. Defensively, I thought Trippier did really well in the first half, but he's looked tired quite a lot in the last few games. His legs are thin. He's 35 as I'm recording this video. Happy birthday, Kieran Trippier. But you're going back to where we were in the previous Champions League campaign, and we said lessons need to be learned. I said that on Sky. I said the manager and the players would have learned lessons Didn't look like it to me. It looked like the same kind of mistakes that we've made previously, where we've been in games and we've huffed and puffed and, you know, we haven't taken the chances, and then the better opposition just turn it up a notch and they get the result. And that's what happened against Liverpool recently. That's what's happened against Barcelona last night as well. And it's a frustration, because my worry is that Eddie Howe's over loyalty to players is his Achilles heel, and it will cost us games again. I thought Burn, although he was all right, looked a bit shaky last night. Ironically, when he went in the back three with Botman and Chow, he looked a bit better, because Botman and Chow were looking after the ball so well amongst each other. There's a real development there of a good partnership. And what was the point of signing these lads if you're not going to play them, Eddie? I don't understand it. You know, and Tino Livramento needs to go back to right back, and Lewis Hall has to come in at left back for me. He really, really does. I just think that Tino's having all right games at left back, and he's defensively and he's up and down the line, but get him back to his natural position, right back. Get him there, get him familiar with that, get him playing, and then get Lewis Hall back in this side, because Lewis Hall offers you, again, someone who looks after the ball really well, and when you haven't got a lot of possession, you need those players. I just feel like the substitutions weren't quite right. Certainly the starting lineup wasn't right. I feel like it was a reality check to how far away we are from that kind of top-class opposition. We talk about our midfield being the best in the Premier League. I don't think it is the best in the Premier League. It's up there, you know, but when you're up against Europe's elite, kind of found out a little bit. Bruno was poor. We haven't got time for his little silly pirouettes and the Hollywood passes, getting caught out of possession. You know, Joe Linton's lack of ball retention and poor passing, you know, is going to be punished at this level. You know, Tonali was the best of the three, but even he was sloppy at times because he was crowded out and pressed. But yeah, it's a real reality check. I think Newcastle United are a lot further away from this level than maybe we thought that they were. But, you know, Eddie Howe has to learn to rotate this squad, or we're going to end up with the same problem we had a couple of years ago, which is injuries and, you know, getting kind of flushed out of games like this. But let us know in the comments below what you guys think about the game, about my comments there. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Always like to hear from you. It's good to debate, but not hate or berate, so we'll keep it nice and clean in the comments, guys. But like and subscribe, keep it ever more. I'll be back with some more content soon. Have a cracking day, and we'll see you later. Cheers.
Heroes celebrate. They have done it.